Welcome to this brief description of the white label restaurants business game. Simulations are getting increasingly popular in business schools and strategy teaching these days, and the reasons are quite simple. We've long used business case studies to support principles, concepts or theory that we talk about in class, and this provides understanding, relevance and the basis for discussion. But case-based teaching alone leaves some gaps. By adding simulations, students actually get to use the concepts they're being taught. They understand that time passes in the real world and that things change, and the decisions that they make have consequences which they themselves will have to deal with. Furthermore, by discussing issues in teams, they have to negotiate a way forward in any situation they find themselves in, which means that the team enhances its collective learning, and if they get a chance to repeat their work with a simulation, perhaps in different circumstances, this reinforces the learning that comes out of the exercise. Lastly, because they're actually running the strategy by making decisions continually over time, they're actually implementing strategy with the result that they get far better understanding than they would otherwise. Strategy simulations come in a range of different flavors. You can even get paper-based and board games that can help with strategy teaching. But the main distinction with computer-based games is between those games that work with individual teams and those where you've got multiple teams competing through a complicated network. Simulations can be designed to address issues at different levels, from functional or issue-based cases. Some deal with single business units, whereas others look at the complexities of multi-business cases. By far the most widespread simulations are the so-called big games. These tend to be very comprehensive, very demanding on the students. They are intensely competitive, and they make great capstone exercises, either for strategy courses or indeed for a whole degree program. However, they come with some limitations. They are nearly always black box games in which users can't actually see everything that's going on. They are often set in complicated and unfamiliar settings. They can be very time consuming to carry out, running over many sessions or many days, and they can be pretty scary to facilitate if you've not had plenty of practice and maybe training. Most such games operate by means of teams making quite large numbers of decisions over just a few rounds, and because of the time it takes, they can usually only be run through once. Lastly, they can be quite expensive. The Microworld type games, of which White Label Restaurants is just an example, are somewhat different. They provide complete transparency between the decisions being taken and the results that are achieved. They're set in simple, usually familiar settings. They can be very fast to start and quick to use. Students can be running them within 15 minutes and you can run a whole exercise in little more than an hour. They're self-paced, which means that teams run through the game in their own time and can even carry out multiple experiments on the same scenario. Facilitation is dead easy, and they come with multiple challenges, so students can explore the different issues that arise for the same business, whether it's growing fast, facing new competition, in a mature marketplace, or even in serious trouble. And lastly, these games are quite affordable. There's no such thing as a free lunch, of course, and there are some penalties we pay for this. The first is that to make them easy to get into and to use, they can only have a relatively limited focus, not the very broad focus on issues typical of the much larger games. And competition is indirect, by which we mean that teams are competing against the game itself, not against all of the decisions being made by all the other teams. They can still be highly competitive, however, as teams try to outdo each other against performance objectives that you set. What do you get with white label restaurants? Well, you get a very simple, very short case in a setting that will be completely familiar to just about every student. Everyone goes out to eat in restaurants. You get a set of slides explaining standard strategy frameworks, including quantified analysis of data from the case, and you get additional slides explaining the dynamics of how strategy actually works for this business. You get a small piece of PC-based software, which can either be installed on class computers or can be made available for students to install on their own laptop. And you get a very simple user guide and instructor guide to help you and your class get going. The game is typically run with teams of 3 to 5 students, and you can run as many teams as you have the capacity to manage. The standard strategy frameworks start with basic business model, who we're going to serve with what and how, and provide a simple income statement. Additionally, you get information about how standard industry frameworks apply to the case, and about how various firm-based frameworks work. Here, for example, is a slide assessing the relative impact of competitive forces on the restaurant business. Here is one of a number of slides addressing how the value curve works in this setting. And here's one of 3 slides assessing the resources and capabilities of the business. The emphasis of strategy dynamics is to focus attention on how to grow performance over time. We're concerned here about growing future cash flows rather than optimizing ratios. And the slide set provides a step-by-step explanation as to how the profit performance of the business derives from the business structure. Here is a typical screen that a team may see after they've been running one of the cases for a few quarters. In addition to standard business type reports, there are charts on key indicators for the business. All of these items, by the way, can be simply copied and pasted out into reports if you want students to report back these things. Students make decisions by entering choices in the decision box to the left, hitting the run button, and receiving notification from head office in this case about how their performance has been getting on. There are also extensive tables of data covering not only the financials and the tangible factors about the business, but also quality and satisfaction issues as shown in this case. Lastly, to make the thing completely transparent, we provide a diagram showing the relationships between all of the items. This may look a little scary, but the teacher materials provide a very simple step-by-step explanation about how this diagram works and how it can be used to control the business. We mentioned earlier that these games come with a range of challenges. You simply open these from the file menu and the simulation immediately updates with the information for the new challenge. Students can save these games and all of the data that's included in them is available for export if you want them to produce reports or analysis on their results. In summary then, the White Label Restaurants business game is completely transparent, set in a simple and familiar setting. It's very fast to start and quick to use. Students can work at their own pace and it's very easy to facilitate. The game offers multiple challenges and is pretty affordable. We very much hope that you and your students will find it enjoyable and rewarding to work with this material.